Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my channel Colonati. Today I'm going to do a roundup of the various 8 or 9 trade volumes of comics I've read recently. I don't usually read a lot of comics all at the same time, so I can do just like a wrap-up of comics, but a little while ago, I got really tired of being behind on all of the comic series that I am devoted to that I buy for myself. Comics are a bit pricey. I always put off buying the trades. So I went out and I did a massive order of like 7 things. 6 of them arrived because the 7th one is pre-order of Monsters Volume 2, which I'm very excited about. But yeah, yesterday I sat down and I read all 6 of them, and then I have a couple of other volumes, mostly things that I got from Interlibrary Loan and from the Hugo Voters packet. So I've just read a bunch of comics recently. So first up, I'm going to talk about the 2 comics I read for Hugo Awards because I got them in the Hugo Voters packet, and they were the 2 in the graphic story category that I hadn't read yet. I'm kind of cheating here. One of them is a DNF, and that is Black Panther Volume 1, which is written by Ta-Nehisi Coates, I believe. And I DNF'd Black Panther very quickly because I didn't know anything about Black Panther, about Wakanda, about any of the other characters, and it just seemed very talky. Like there were so many speech bubbles, and I knew I wasn't going to get anything out of it because I would spend my whole time like Wikipediaing characters to figure out who they are and why I should care about them. I just felt like I was plonked down in a world that I knew nothing about, and it wasn't taking its time to introduce things the way I needed it to. So I DNF'd it, and clearly, I mean, if it wins the Hugo Award, I will read the entire thing. I'll come back to it, but for now, it wasn't worth it. And the other one that I read was Vision Volume 1, which is written by Tom King, I think. I liked this, but it was once again hampered by the fact I don't know much about Vision. The only thing I know about Vision is he appeared in one of the Marvel movies. I haven't seen, is it Age of Ultron, where he's introduced in the cinematic universe? I have no idea where he came from. I know nothing about his backstory. He isn't human. He might be kind of an android, whatever. But I liked the premise of Vision. In his first volume, it's Vision wants to be more human. He creates a wife and children for himself, and they go move to the suburbs, and murder happens. And I liked the writing and the feeling of this. It was dark and creepy, and I felt like the story was making some very emphatic points, and I really liked that, but it just didn't transcend on the character level because I didn't know where Vision came from. There's some of these allusions to his life before. I think he was married to some other character who I also know nothing else about. So I felt like I was missing parts of the puzzle. So if somebody were to hand me the 2nd volume of Vision, I would totally read it, but it's not something I think I would pay for. I might be able to get it from the library eventually if the 2nd volume is even out yet. So yeah, that one is worth looking further into for me, but I feel like reading a lot of Marvel comics for me is not the greatest things. I just don't know enough of the universe and the backstories, and the Marvel universe seems really complicated. The other comic that I read, which is the first in a series, is ODY-C Volume 1, written by Matt Fraction. It's taken me so long to get ODY-C. I know people who absolutely love it and were just raving about it when it first came out, and I've also felt like this is kind of a you either love it or you hate it type of comic. Very divisive, and it's supposed to be very strange, and it is. ODY-C is a gender-flipped space opera retelling of the Odyssey. It's nuts. And this is the thing that I liked about this comic so much. It felt like the creators really wanted it to be out there and weird and jarring and just bizarre and psychedelic and trippy, and it is. Like, they were aiming for this. They achieved it so well. It's unlike any other comic I've ever read. The thing that I liked the most about it was the writing. It's written in kind of that high epic poetry style, which it juxtaposed with the comic form is just so strange, but I think it works. I just embrace that wholeheartedly. I haven't read the original Odyssey, but kind of through cultural osmosis, I know a lot of the key points of it and the key characters. So I followed the story and I could kind of see how they were flipping it and warping it and using it, and that was really interesting. So I adored this for the chutzpah. I don't know. It was great. Unlike a lot of other people though who love this comic, I am not a huge fan of the art. You've probably heard me say multiple times before that I really like art in comics that is bright, colorful, really, really vibrant, rich hues, and Odyssey does that. I love the colors in it, but the artwork was just way too confusing for me. I could not track the story in any way by looking at the art. I had to rely on the words only. It's a very drippy, psychedelic, warped and distorted type of style, and it made me think about Salvador Dali and melting clocks and like everything mushing together. I really didn't like it. I prefer more realistic artwork where people's head shapes stay consistent from panel to panel. But that is just a personal preference. Now onto the comics I read, which are later volumes in series, and at this point I'm going to tell you I'm not going to try to recap the overall plot and premises of these series. I am going to assume that you'll be interested in this part of the video if you are also reading the series or you're aware of what they're about, so hopefully I'm not wrong in assuming that. The first one is Lazarus Volume 4, Poison, written by Greg Rucka. I enjoy this series so much, and yet it is really different from the other ongoing series that I read. Very military, very dystopia. I can't think of anything else that I read that is like this, but I love the main character Forever, and I think the premise, which is kind of dystopia, has its own twists that I really enjoy. It doesn't feel like it's ripping off other dystopias. This volume has a very interesting first issue about an undercover nun who's like doing spy agent work, and I liked how that gave me a different look at the other people who live in this world. The previous volumes have focused on the rich elite family members and the serfs, the waste who want to be uplifted and stuff. But whatever the nun is and what her fellow nuns are, they're not quite the same as the other people. It was a nice look into the other workings of this world and how this system works. So I really liked that, and I'm hoping that that story, what that nun is doing, is picked up in volume 5. The other part of this is Forever leading a team of people to take back a city from a rival family, which that story was so interesting, but there are character interactions and some things that Forever has done and her family wondering what's going on with her that were really good, just kind of moving her character arc along. So overall I thought it was a really solid volume, and I wish that I could get the next one like right away. I tend to read these very far apart, and sometimes I forget characters that I introduced in the previous volume. For example, there's a woman who reappears in this volume who had a story in the previous one, and I did not remember her at all. And yeah, who knows what I missed because of that. Next up is Descender Volume 4, Orbital Mechanics. This is written by Jeff Lemire and the watercolor artwork is done by Dustin Nguyen. This is the one series I read that even if the writing and the story goes bonkers, I will still read it for the artwork because it is just stunning. Like I said, it's watercolor, and you can like see the texture of the watercolor paper sometimes. It's so gorgeous. I have no artistic talents, and so I'm sitting here thinking, how do you get those nice crisp lines with watercolor? How do you blend the colors like that? It just, oh, it's so awesome. I also really love the colors used, particularly this character who has a very, very distinctive and bold character design. I love looking at her. It's just awesome. This volume was also very, very good. I rated this 5 stars, and I think it's the only one since the first volume that I've rated 5 stars. I think I mainly give high marks to the trades of comics when it seems like the plot is moved along at a good clip, and then there's a nice cliffhanger for the next one, and that's exactly what this does. I enjoyed volume 3. It had set up some like real oh my gosh moments, and then things actually happen in this one. At this point, the series is definitely past the setup stage. All the characters are established, their relationships are established, and the plot is a little bit clearer. The only thing that I am not as interested in this series is the stuff about the Hardwire, that group on the Machine Moon. I don't really care. What I care about is Tim 21 maybe getting back together with the boy who's now grown up that he was the companion for. And it seems like Tim 21 is having these brushes with like a robot afterlife, and I really want to know what's up with that. I think the biggest question of this series that people are investigating is, what does Tim 21 have to do with the big harvester machines? They think there's some similarity between his code or codec and those machines, and I really want that question to be answered pretty soon. I don't want it to be too drawn out. But anyway, this was great. And if you haven't read it yet, if you love this series and you haven't read this volume yet, you definitely need to get it. Another comic series where the plot is kicking into high gear and exciting things are happening is The Wicked and the Divine. This is volume 5, Imperial Phase 1. This is written by Kieron Gillen, the art is by Jamie McKelvie, and the colorist is Matthew Wilson. I gotta mention him too because the colors are so amazing. So this series is roughly about a group of gods who are reborn every 90 years and then they're fated to die within 2 years. I don't want to get spoilery about what's happening because some of that stuff happens in volume 4, the previous one, which was basically an oh shiitake moment on every page. It was great. But these gods' world has been rocked. Everything has been destroyed, and they're trying to pick up the pieces and continue on with no guidance, no direction, and very little knowledge of what's going on with them. This is another comic that sometimes does really experimental and cool things with the comic format, and that's one of the reasons why I really enjoyed this volume. The first issue is actually like a fake magazine about the pantheon of gods, and it features interviews with the major gods. The interviews were actually written by having real people like Lori Penny come in and do a chat session with the writer of the series, and then they turned that into articles, so it kind of mimics the style of the interviewers. I just thought that was really cool. I didn't realize that they were real people who had done the articles until I recognized Lori Penny's name. I just thought that was a really interesting way of doing some more character development, getting into the minds of these characters, and then of course it flips to their regular style. I appreciate the thought that goes into this about making it more multimedia and stuff. I think a lot of the series is about the relationship between famous celebrities and the public, their fans, and the media, which are themes that I really didn't appreciate when I read the first couple of volumes, and I think I need to go back and reread them because there are some things about like Cassandra and what happened to Cassandra when she was a journalist and now she's not, trying not to spoil things, that I've forgotten or I didn't pick up the first time. Another thing that I was reminded of that made me fall in love with this all over again is how diverse the cast is. You have black characters, biracial characters, quite a few like bisexual gods and everything. It's just awesome. If you have been on the fence about continuing with this series, I would recommend trying to get to volume 4 because that is the point at which it really gains steam and momentum and all those confusing parts fall into place. It coalesces and makes sense. The last 2 series I'm going to talk about are the really fun ones, not necessarily deep, just brain candy. The first one is Lumberjanes. Oh, I love Lumberjanes so much. I read volume 5, which is Band Together, and volume 6, which is Sink or Swim. I do love that Noelle Stevenson still comes back and does the cover art on some of them, even though she's not the main artist for the series. I love her art. I love her style. In volume 5, the first issue goes back in time a little bit and shows the girls arriving at this summer camp, and I really liked it because it gave you a peek at their parents, their siblings, their situations, how they came to camp, how they got there, and some of them were friends before, some of them weren't, and I just thought that was a well-needed break from the madcap adventures, just telling you a bit more about the characters. I would really like to know more about these girls' lives outside of camp. I mean, I know that the whole series is about their adventures at camp, but I sometimes want to know a little bit more, see a bit deeper into their lives and their personalities. The other issues are the mermaid story with a nice moral lesson about not always prioritizing what you want over what your group of friends needs, and I thought that was just a really sweet story. Volume 6 involves Seafaring Kieron, who's a great character, shapeshifters, sulkies, magical portals to another land where time runs differently, which is really a huge callback to a previous story. These 2 volumes show a definite shift in the series to longer story arcs, and I really like that. Like, all of the issues in a single volume are one story and not quite so crazy. It's making a bit more sense. I've enjoyed the previous strange madcap adventures, but I like that there's more plot happening now, and the questions about the portals opening up and going to another world, as well as all the other questions about the supernatural things going on around the camp, really fascinate me. So, of course, I'm looking forward to the next volume. This is just one of those series I read because it makes me happy. Speaking of series that just make me happy, Giant Days. This is written by John Allison and the artwork is by Max Sarin. It is slice of life about the college days of a group of 3 young women and all the shenanigans they get up to. It is really about college life, being poor, not having enough money, trying to find housing that isn't awful, just all of those things. So great. I read volumes 4 and 5 and they were wonderful. Each issue is kind of its own story. Things like going to IKEA to buy furniture because the previous people who lived in the house you're renting destroyed all the furniture. I'm not sure I can say much more about it than that. Just, this is not in any way reflecting my college experience, and yet it feels kind of universal. And those are all the comics I've read recently. If you are reading any of these series and you wanted to discuss them, please comment down below. And if you have any suggestions for me of other comics you think I should check out based on what I really enjoy here, please let me know that as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you again soon. And until then, bye.